Hi friends, let's see the app we are going to develop in the next couple of lessons. When you run this app, this is the main option screen. You will see a menu which is on a table view. So I can click on say employee options, then it will load this data, and all the employee data are loaded dynamically from a data source, right? And then I can click on employee, and then it's dynamically changing this page with that particular employee and the projects. If I go back and click another employee, you can see the same page is dynamically changing with that employee and the projects, which are all loaded dynamically. The images are also loaded dynamically from a data source, right? So it's different images loaded dynamically. And then I can delete employees. Let's say I can swipe and say delete, then it deletes the data, right? If not, I can click on edit and say if I want to delete something, click on this and click delete, right? And when I'm done, I can say done, right? And then further I can insert data dynamically. Let us say a section P and say Peter, for example, and click OK. So it all gets added dynamically, right? Then once I'm done with employees, I can go scroll down, right? And then I can go into department options, right? So department, and do the same thing for department, right? But it's very important that you have to make sure to look at the next couple of lectures in this on table views, that is part 1, 2, 3, etc., until we complete this app. It explains all the theory and the practical knowledge which you need to know about developing this app, right? Okay friends, we are very excited to show you how to develop this app practically, and let's do it now. Hi, so let's start another exciting lesson. Table views, dynamic content, UITableViewController, part 1. Let's move forward, guys. So the tools used in this lecture is usual Xcode version 11.4.1 for practicals and Apple Developer Docs for referencing. Prerequisite. You have to look at the following previous lessons on table views in Objective-C in this lesson series. So it's table view, static content, especially, and then you have to look at some of our previous video lessons, basic lessons on Objective-C, right? Awesome. In this session, you will learn the theory, introduction, using developer docs and the API, and we'll discuss about the two approaches possible, that is UITableViewController and using the UITableView. Okay, so let's look at the introduction using the developer docs. So if you look at the Apple developer docs, if you do a bit of a search, you will see that okay, let's say if you search for table views, that's what you want to do, right? Say if you search for table views in Google, and if you go into Apple developer docs, so our requirement is table views. So let's see, okay, it presents data, that's clear, right? And it says it's a class, right? It's interface, meaning it's going to be the interface for the class. So then it says it displays data in this format, right, in a table view. Okay, right? So they say tables are commonly used by apps, right? You want to structure them hierarchically, right? And the UI table view manage the appearance of the table, right? So the appearance of the table is managed by the UI table view class, right? It manages the appearance, and but there are cells inside that, right? So you will have UI table view cell objects inside that. So you will see them in the practical we are going to do after this introduction. So if you want to add a table view to your interface, the developer docs recommends to add a table view to drag a table view controller. So what is recommended is to drag a table view controller. So if you look at your Xcode, if you go into the object library, if you type for table views, you got these three options, right? The table view, then the table view cell. So those are the two which was discussed just here, right? The table view and the table view cells, right? Okay, awesome. And then once again, if you look at the object library, you got the other one, table view controller, right? So that's what this developer doc is talking. So if you want a table view, it recommends you to put a table view controller, right? Not the table view. Let's see why it is, right? So it says put a UI table view controller onto your storyboard. So then Xcode creates a new scene that includes the view controller and the table view. So when you put a table view controller, it adds the view controller and the table view and ready for use, right? Then it says table views are data driven, right? So normally getting their data from a data source, right? Let's see how to do it practically after this, right? So then data source manage the data, right? And is responsible for creating and configuring cells. So keep in mind, you have to have a data source, right? And it has to create the cells, right? If the content of your table never changes, right, then you can configure. So so that we have done in our previous lessons before this under table view static content, right? So have a look at our uh, previous lessons. Have a look at our previous lessons on table view static content, which we have done it already, right? So but if you want dynamically changing data, you have to use this approach with a data source. Then for more information, it's asking to look at filling a table with data, right? So let's have a look at it, right? And before that, before we go into it, because it requested, it's asking, the developer guide is asking to use table view controller. Let's look at that. So UITableViewController is a class, right? And so it says it's subclass the UITableViewController when your interface consists of a table view and a little or no other content. Which means when you put a table view, what does it mean? A little or no content, right? Then that's where it's asking to subclass UITableViewController. What does that mean? So what that means is, now if I have a view controller, a normal view controller, then I can put a lot of components, right? So I can put labels, let's say I can put buttons, right? So I can put a lot of buttons, then I can put a lot of text fields, right? I can put a lot of text fields. So that is for a normal, let us say, view controller. But what it says, use a UI table view controller when your interface consists of a table view and little or no other content. So if you don't have much of this content, right, to put in your screen, but if it's mainly you want a table view, then it recommends not a view controller, because this is a view controller, right? This is a view controller. And instead of that, so what it says is this: now if you want, right, now into this view controller, if you want, you can put a table view, right? Instead of a table view control, you can put a table view, right, if you want. But what it recommends is not this. What it says is, first see whether you have little or no other content. If so, use a table view controller, UI table view, which means instead of a view controller, it's recommending you to use a table view controller which is independent, which has the table view and the view controller embedded, and it's ready to use, right? So these are the two options we are talking in over here, right? So when we said the two options, right, two approaches, right, two possible approach, either using the table view controller or using table views. So now I showed you the two approaches, right? UI table view controller and UI table view, right? So this is UI table view controller, this one, right? This one. This is the UI table view, right? So the two approaches are clear to you now, right? When do you use the UI table view controller? It clearly says in the developer docs, whenever there's little or no other content, then use, if it's little or less other content, then use a table view controller. But if you have a lot of other content and buttons and labels and text fields, and then if you want to also have a table view, yes, you can go for a table view, right? So it's up to you to use suitably, decide which one to use and appropriate situation, right? Awesome, right? So that's where you got the UI table view controller, right? uh, Awesome, right? It's the table view controller. This option already adapts the protocols you need to manage your table views content and respond to change. Now that is important, because when you have a table view, you have to have the protocols to manage the content. So you have to adhere to one protocol to manage the content, and then you have to adhere to for another protocol to respond to changes, right? So let's now, the UI table view controller by default has already adapted those two protocols. Now let's see what are those two protocols, right? So if you scroll down in this document, right, now So it says already adapts to those two protocols. So those two protocols are down. So if you look at down, it says, right, okay, relationships, it confirms. So this UI table view controller confirms to these two protocols, right? One is UI table view data source, other one is UI table view delegate. So if I open these two, so you have to understand this carefully, right? So if I open the two, one is UI table view data source, it's a protocol. So if you are not sure of what are protocols, have a look at the previous lessons in this series about protocol, which is basically coming in previous lessons, right? Have a look at that, have a look at it, right? Our protocols and understand. So so you are table data source, right? And in this protocol there are a couple of methods, right? And there are only two methods which are required, right? But there are other methods which are not compulsory, but at least every table view controller, if you want it to have data and respond to changes, it has to adhere to this protocol, and then it has to make sure that it overrides these two methods, right? So we will see what are these methods, right? So the table view methods, like let's see when we are doing the practical. But keep in mind that it's very important for you to look at the UI table view data source, right? And the next one is this is basically this UI table data source is to manage the data, right, and provide cells. Then the next protocol is UI table view delegate, right? So this manage, right, this has the methods for managing the selections, configuring the selection headers and footers, deleting, reordering, right, and actions in a table. So like say the actions related to the table, because UI table data source manages the data, right? But then the UI table view delegate manages the actions related to this, right? So the actions are given below, like such as row selections. If you select something, if you swipe something on the table view, right? So those are the actions, right? So now you are very clear that you have to override these two. You have to your class should adhere to these two protocols. Awesome. So now the slide is updated. So very important, if you are using the UITableViewController method, make sure you create a custom class, right, of UITableView. Let's see how we do it in the practical. Then you have to make sure that you override the data source and the delegate methods, right? So for that you have to adhere to the protocols, UITableView data source protocol and UITableView delegate protocol. Okay guys, awesome. So now you are clear about that requirement, right? Right, so let's go down. So these are some of the methods of it, right? Okay, cool. Some of the topics, right? Now we have an idea of data source, and let's override these methods, right? Right, and there are a few other things as well. Now we were here, we were reading about it. So we saw that about the table view controller, and then we saw that we had to override those methods, right? And one important thing, the table view controller, it's very important for you to keep in mind. When you write the methods field, okay, something important I'm going to show you here. Just to remind you once again, table view controller already adapts these protocols, right? So this UI table view controller already adapts the protocols. What you have to do is just override the methods, right? Whereas if you are using the second approach, if you have second approach of using your table views, which means this approach, right? If you're using this approach, then in your view controller you have to explicitly mention that you are going to adhere to those two protocols. Whereas if you use your UI table view controller subclass UI table view controller and use it, then it by default adheres to those two protocols. But once again, if you're using the table view, you will have to, your view controller will have to say that it's going to adhere to the protocol. So let's show you, we will show you both of the approaches. So right now in this lesson, and the next few lessons, we will talk about UI table view controller. Soon after we finish UI table view controller, then we will the next lesson you are doing is the same thing, dynamic content, but that will be using just UI table views, right? So we'll teach you both the options so that you will be comfortable, right? Because the purpose of this lecture series is to make you comfortable as developers, and where you can go and work in the industry in a very short period of time. So that's the objective of this lesson series, right? Awesome. Now you got it clear about the table view controllers, that part, and then you saw that it adheres to these protocols. Then in this it says, if you want to read more about the other aspects, right? Let's look into this UI table view. So filling a table view with the data, right? So we were initially in the UI table view, then it recommended to use UI table view controller. Then they two go hand in hand. Why do I say like that? That is because, okay, you want a UI table view, but it recommends to put a table view controller. But inside the table view controller, there is a UI table view, right? So inside the table view controller, so see, inside the table view controller, if I show it, see, there's a table view. Look at this. See, so inside the table view controller, guys, look at the document hierarchy. It has a table view. So which means, though you are using a table view controller, it has a table view, right? Embedded, right? The other approach is you don't use a table view controller, you straight away use a table view. That's what the two differences are. Now hope you are clear with it. We will be doing lessons on both. Anyhow, overall, then you can see how to fill a table with the data, right? So that is this one, right? Filling a table with data, right? So then there are sections and rows, right? Then as now you are clear that your object, if you are filling with data, it has to add up to the table view data source protocol, which we just saw in a little while ago, right? So you got table view rows and columns, right? So when you are filling the data, right, when you want to fill the data, you have to provide these methods, right? You have to provide the number of rows and the number of sections. So how many sections are there and how many rows are there? Now if you are not clear about the sections and rows, have a look at our previous lessons before this lesson, coming under table views, static content. Now at the moment, this lesson is table view dynamic content, right? And using your table view controller. But before this lesson, we did the table view static content. Look at that static content lessons before this for you to understand the sections and the rows, right? It's a continuation of series of lessons. So make sure you look at the previous lessons before this, right? So the number of sections, so you have to override, and the number of rows in the section you will have to provide. And then you will have a data source, and then we'll see how we do this. Then you while you are filling the data, you can define the appearance of the rows, right? So you can go, so it says in your storyboard, right, perform the following actions for each prototype cell. What is a prototype cell? Prototype cell is once again, now in your table view, right, see, there is a prototype cell. So for this cell you can give the properties. That's what it says, right? So it says select the style, right, set the style, right, or set it to one of the standard size. So it says select your prototype cell, and let's say prototype cell, right, this one, prototype cell, and give the style, see, custom or whatever you want, right, the style, and assign non-empty string for cells identify attributes. So make sure you give, let's see, we'll work on that when in the practical, right? And view add views and constraint from custom cells, specify the class of custom. So let's do it with the practicals, right? Then when you are doing this, you will use a subclass called UI table view cell, right? You will define, right? We will see, right? We in the practical, right? So you can create and configure the cells, right? Especially when you create and configure the cells, which you are going to do in a little while, right? We'll be doing. So all these theories we are discussing, we'll be doing the practical immediately after this discussion, right? So now then there's a method called DQ, right? Reusable cells. So that is very important, because when it comes to using the cells, right? So because there can be a large number of cells if it's a huge list, then maybe there are say 1,000 items. That means there should be 1,000 cells to scroll up and down. But this method, DQ reusable cells, what it does is, though there are 1,000 cells at a time on a screen, there's only limited number of cells which can be displayed. So what this does is, whenever you scroll up and down, it will reuse the cells to display the data, rather than creating 1,000 cells. It will create a certain number of cells and reuse them, right? So to display the data. So that is handled by this method, DU reusable cells with identifier. For that you will be using the cell identifier, and you will configure the cells and return. That's what we are doing next, right? And basically, so something like this, you will call the method dequeue usable cells inside, inside the relevant method. It's cell for row at index path, right? Let's see, like it's in the method you are basically focusing on the cell for the row, and then you will return the cell, right? Okay, awesome. And then the data source, we had a look at it, the UI table view data source, right? Which is one of the methods which you have to, yeah, the UI table data source is one of the methods. We saw it earlier, right? Which you have to make sure that you override and provide the number of rows and the number of sections and the number of rows, right? Awesome, right? Okay, so then the location, specifying the location of rows, right, and the sections. So for that you got something called ns index path object coming as a parameter where you can refer into it, right? And then you can also configure the cells, right, for your table. Let's see, you can use a reusable identifier, right? You can give the cells with a style, likewise, right? And you can assign the text for the cell, you can assign the image, which is what we are going to do in a little while, right? Awesome. And you can provide it with custom view. You can change the height, right, etc. You can do a lot of things, right? Okay, so you can use the row height property, right? And you can do a lot of things, right? Awesome, right? So there are a few other things. Let's do now. Let's go and do the practical for this, right? So you got a clear idea of the two approaches. So we'll be doing both of them. We'll be covering both of them, right, very soon, just after this, right? Awesome, right? So let's move down. So just to summarize it, this in the second approach, very important, we'll be doing that. You will have to create a subclass of UI view controller, because in the second approach you don't have a table view controller, right? So you will be just having a view controller, right? And onto the view controller is where you put the table view. So this is what I said. Let me show you. See, now in the second approach, basically if you look at here, the second app using UI table views, this one, so your table view is in a view controller, right? So in that second approach, you have to make sure that you create a subclass of UI view controller, and then you have to specify that it's conformed into the following two protocols, the UI table view data source protocol and the UI table view delegate protocol. And then you have to also override the data source and delegate methods, right? To look at that lesson down the line, right? After this. So that's what, so the conclusion is you learn all those, what was specified, right? And you got a clear idea of the two different approaches. And we didn't do a big practical. I was just showing Xcode, but let's do the practical. So there's nothing to download after this, right? Reference we use was Apple Developer Docs. And what's next? Have a look at the remaining lessons, right, on this, right? Practicals on this, and have a look at our Objective-C Adapt UI lessons. Very important to have a look at them. And also have a look at our other lessons on Objective-C, and also make sure to have a look at other lectures on machine learning and data science, right? You got other series, right, in this channel, so make sure you have a look at it, which is a very important thing. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, right, for you to learn about all this machine learning and data science, right? So, and let's meet with another lesson, right? So see you in the next lesson, guys.